Thank you for tuning in to Androna Talks Radio, gathering as one in our sovereign truth from a galactic perspective, exploring our world with new ideas, knowledge, and a promise of a better future. Galactic discussions for galactic-minded people. Androna Talks.
Hello everyone, thank you for joining us today on Androna Talks Radio. I'll be joined here with Chris, and we're going to discuss some of the works of Rene Margritte, who was a Belgian artist born in November 21st of 1898 and who had died in 1967. He did Surrealism art, Art Deco, Cubism, Post-Impressionist, Modern art, and Dada, which is another reference to art. All of this work is quite interesting, and we're doing a contrast to some of the things that we're seeing today, in particular some of these spheres that he created. And also at the end of the video that you'll see that we are including a reference to the movie The Time Travelers, where the same symbology and everything is there. This sphere is also present. So in the beginning of the video, you'll see that we have some actual video. So don't, just make sure you take a look, and then towards the end, we have only audio. So just to give you a heads up, this is something new for us, but anyhow, here goes. I hope you enjoy it. So this is called the Memory 2, and it has a ball in it.
Yeah, and what's interesting for me is that it seems that they have the eye pretty much in blood, like it happened with the yellow vest. A lot of them lost their eyes. Also, it's called Memory 2, which reminded me pretty much when I see that the new memory is that ball. The memory goes in the ball
goes
because
in
of
here.
the loss of memory, because of a trauma. Yeah, and that's
because they're taking the soul, or the mind, I should say, the mind out, putting it into and storing it here.
Yep, that's like in the movie, the little clip of the movie Time Travel, when that guy goes in the museum, and when he asked what is that ball, the guy said, well, it is a photon memory core that holds the memory of whole humanity. So again, it's completely AI.
Here again, that this is covering of your face, loss of identity, in addition to terrorism. I mean, he did this, in the 1900s. This also, the cage always reminds me of imprisonment or freedom. It could be one or the other.
It can be the Matrix.
It can be the Matrix, the cage, network. We looked at, there's just so much. I know. What's this right here? It's a tree within it, and there's another tree. There's the tree within a tree.
The plagia. A plagia is when someone wants to fake to be someone else. He's taking, for example, the work of someone else and pretend it's his own work. That's the name
like a plagiarist.
Yeah, plagiarist.
That's those that do Inception, or the plagiarists, the fake matrix within the other matrix.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to return back. Hold on. How did I get out of there? All right. And I don't know if he ever describes why what the fixation is with these apples. You know, everything's about the facade. Everything is hiding, and the
the
reality
apple.
becomes, non-reality.
Can the apple be connected to, the origin of Adam and Eve, the apple,
Yeah,
apple story?
absolutely.
Or it's Apple also, the computer brand.
Yeah. And over here, look at the mirror, and kind of like what, you would perceive as a vampire doesn't reflect his own image. We talk about the umbrella group. He has tons of umbrellas.
What is the one on the right of the one with a mirror? It says Brussels.
On the right with the mirror.
Yeah, you see workers, and they're just to the left.
Right here.
Uh-huh. Brussels.
Creating a formation. Oh, there's Brussels.
A Brussels icon who captivate the world.
Futurism. And how would he know about futurism? Some of the stuff we're looking at shapes. It's similar to the shapes that we're looking at over with Mary Magdalene, where they dissect the picture and find the M, which then ends up going back to monarch.
But
and
look what we see
Peter
here.
says monarch.
You see two columns, two pillars, right? You see the man with the hat, the black hat again. And
there's
then
the pillars, right?
And it says the Brussels. What is it? The city captivate the world. What's happening with the EU? Maybe not the world.
1898. Yep.
So it's almost like control center with these pillars and the black hat in there. Look at these men.
The umbrella group, right?
Yeah. Wow.
Strange. I don't know what that is. Magritte and Dolly. There's a facade. It looks like a building, but it's something else. Step into another reality, the multi-matrix that Peter talks about. Here is the all-seeing eye, and inanimate objects being the observer.
It's like a peon there. You just put your cursor on a peon with a all-seeing eye.
Yeah. Kind of like a joke, right?
Mm-hmm.
Things are not what they seem to be. Upside down, sideways. Upside down again. Clouds. This is the altering of the matrices. The illusion of what we think is real. Showing the moon on the other side of the tree. Being able to move things in places where they don't seem to belong.
Look, there is one with a purse.
Yeah. In the purses we talked about, those things that you find with the ancient Sumerians, holding these bags. They're not necessarily a purse, but sort of have that look over a stone. Which could, like you said, refer to a Stone Age purse that leads back to the whole ancient Sumerian. But we also found one of these things with Shiva. There's an image of Shiva holding or having like a little bucket there with him, and my impression was that Shiva had it first. I don't know what this is. It's strange. Strange combination of things that just don't seem to belong. There's the 3 floating balls. And I have, like I said, I bought these, I don't know, I was completely drawn to these little jewelry containers, and I didn't know why. And then I saw Magritte's paintings, and I'm like, oh my gosh. And even that picture of myself wearing a top that looks like the clouds, and so kind of blending in with some of the stuff that Magritte had already done. And this one, oh, it just moved. But it's, you know, are you looking at the sky, or what are you looking at in its multi-levels of facade? And here I am, you know, drawn to all of this stuff, not quite knowing why. You know, in time travel, you in the shoe or you out of the shoe? And what we figured out is what we found out is Magritte is, you know, essentially, here's the all-seeing eye. I mean, he did this in 1928. And we see that Magritte is the informer, the one that tells the other travelers what's going on.
You just passed a picture. If you go down again, yeah, here on the left, CBS.
Yeah.
What is that? I mean, there was no CBS.
I think that was
at the time.
CBS News, and replicating that same symbology that Magritte has. I believe they had taken that in from Magritte.
Mm-hmm.
Because that came in, of course, much later. CBS News. There was something up here that I was looking at. The finger. It reminds me of the finger that's in Paris, where you just see a random finger. It's more like a thumb. In that train station at the end of the train, where it looks like the Arc de Triomphe.
Arc of the Defense.
Arc of Defense. And in that area, there is just like a random finger. And I don't know. I mean, that. Some of these are his paintings. Some of these might be paintings of others that wanted to reflect on some of the things that he came up with. Peter was talking about all of these like kind of cubes and everything having to do with the kind of alterations of the way that we look at reality and what's happening with our reality now. This is an interesting picture. The things that are on fire. There's a key. Who would think about burning a key, or could a key retain a flame like that? Does he have a hat on top of his head? He's walking on water, or standing in water. So this is just this is from another person, Marcus Muller Beach. I mean, this picture right here does not look like someone who's peering in other dimensionally, just looking in through the sky.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And there is an interesting structure right there. Couldn't that be like that tower, similar to
the Rene Chateau?
Yeah.
Chateau.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I never noticed that before.
Look at the one that has that ball, and it looks like Gandhi. Or I don't know who that is. No, there's.
Oh,
See,
yeah. Mm-hmm. This is not an Israeli ambassador. I don't know if that's one of his works either. Oh, maybe it is by him. But it is interesting, right?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it is. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I think I went too far because I was going to point out something back here. I'm trying to see what it was that I was looking at. Yeah, some interesting. I think I just lost my train of thought of what I was going to look at. But anyhow, there's some really strange, interesting images here that they, pretty much said is he was the one. My impression is he's a part of this group of time travelers.
Oh, now I see the 3 spheres there. Oh, sorry. Yeah, go to that one first.
I want you to look at this Amos Rex. Do you remember when we talked earlier? Well, we'll talk about this later. That R41-X Rex that we saw yesterday.
Mm-hmm. Which means king.
And it was something Tesla. Tesla. I had something in here about Tesla. From Abel, or it called him Amble, R41-X Rex, which was something that we're going to talk about later. And that is the numbers of 3s. And so here is Amos Rex. It's close, right? Abel Rex or Amos Rex or R41-Rex. And here is this. He's carrying a yellow rose, but he's huge. Comparison. Yeah, he's in a mask. I used it for some kind of cartoon or like comic book or something. I mean, it's here. A lot of the stuff that we're talking about is here. Now we have to put it together for everyone to see it because it's very strange. And look at this. It's showing the female as a machine inside Magritte. That's interesting, isn't it?
That is interesting. And when I saw the
this looks like a lab too, doesn't it?
Yeah, definitely.
That is a lab.
And you see these men with the black hats again.
Mm-hmm. Carrying, was that a fishnet? The other one has a club. And listening to their the music. Mm-hmm. And in the background, there's these 3 guys, and then the mountains. Like as if like they're hiding behind here. And is there blood on her face?
Yeah, I see some blood.
Right? So what's going on here?
Well, it's again on the same side as the picture of the statue that's called Memory 2, when it's on the, it seems, the right side, or the right or left side, depending where you see when you look at it. But on the side of the temporal, that's be connected, I guess, to memory. So she sheds blood there, and then they have the recording, because you could play music, but you could also record. There was also a recorder instrument in the past. So what are they recording?
Yeah, it's mind control.
True. What is the name of that painting? The Mystery of the...
Mystery of the Ordinary.
There's nothing ordered in this one.
No? Probably in that book, but I'm not sure if that's the name of this one. Cami Stone. He's looking at the egg and then creating the bird. But anyhow, so getting maybe enough of this, and then I will show some of the images that I have at home that kind of add to some of this illusionary effect that he had. I wanted to show a few things that started to stand out to me. I was reflecting on the idea of being introduced to Magritte's work through some of our discussions, Chris, and seeing that there was some strange things that was happening, that I was bringing this imagery into my own life and not even realizing it, and thinking that there might have been a psychic connection to this, or keying into whatever Magritte was doing, and or even possibly was there a program. So I put together this meditation, and you notice my shirt matches the sky, where I see this picture here of this mirror, and oh, just went off on me. And we'll close that. And you see this mirror. It's kind of like being inside and outside at the same time, or that you actually become a part of this landscape. And so I thought that was really strange that I had experienced that. And another thing is I purchased these two, they're actually like, you know, little containers for jewelry or other small items. And that kind of brought in a lot of the discussions regarding, you know, these different images that we were looking at of this ball, this circular ball. And if you notice that image in particular, oh, here's another one, whereas all of these things, sort of these goddess and god, or whatever they are, sort of looks like something out of antiquities or from ancient Greece or something. And here are these strange balls all around, and this was given to me as a gift. So that's hanging on a wall where I live. But the other picture that I had, that's not it. Anyhow, so I mean, you saw that earlier, and it's sort of this strangeness that we're seeing. You know, there's the ball, there's the clouds. I mean,
and there is the arc. You know, the arc shape of that door is something that you see a lot into the mudflood buildings. The pre-mudflood buildings have these arc, these columns. It's something you see everywhere around the world before the mudflood. So it's interesting. It's there too in that picture.
Yeah, and this all-seeing eye. I mean, we talked about a lot of this stuff, but I wanted to bring in, you know, those items, those images that I was, you know, automatically having in my home, and I was trying to figure out what in the world's going on. I just was like, this looks really familiar to me, and how do I know it? So, and I'm sure that many of you have had that experience as well, where you're looking at something and saying, that's really strange. You know, I had those images in my head already. So another thing that we started to look at is this. I mean, we're talking about this shape. And this is the Pokeball, or yeah, Pokemon Go ball, Pokeball. And it's supposedly, you know, I mean, it holds, I guess it's a way to capture another one of the Pokemon characters. But at the same time, it's the same kind of idea where you're capturing a potential consciousness, or it's the container for something that's alive, some kind of living essence. Now they're, preparing children for this concept.
Yeah, it might be capturing the souls. Yeah,
the soul, the mind, whatever it is. And in this case, it's it's another living being, and you're capturing it in a ball like that.
Yeah, absolutely.
But it is strangely familiar. It's very strangely similar to what Magritte had created, and he created this much earlier than Pokemon. Let's see if I can find those balls that you see typically in, there they are. The voice of space, he calls it. And in the book, The Time Traveler, that was a receptacle for all the consciousness. So this type of symbology is something that we might look at. And I thought this was also interesting, is an area that you shared with us that's in Florida.
Yeah, it's maybe 40 minutes away from me south, and it's there's a lot of gated community here, but this one is definitely something different. It looks almost like a motherboard, a circuit. If you look at all the pies, if you see that as a pizza, each pies has a different infrastructure inside. They're not similar to anyone that's next to it. And when we looked at that one, it was connected also to something in the North Pole, of some maps we've seen in the North Pole. So it's all connected. I mean, it's very interesting.
Well, look at it's exactly like the Pokeball, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's the circular space right there in the center. Yep. And then you have, the lines going out. In the North Pole image, it's interesting because it's sort of, similar in shape. This is an old map, but I thought it kind of depicted the size and everything. But I want you to notice something. There's kind of like an open space here. I don't know quite what that is right here that's created that. I don't know if it's water or something else. But here, it's kind of open right here too, isn't it? There's a little bit of a gap. It's not as... I just thought it was strangely very familiar to me.
Yeah.
Here's another image of it too. You see it again.
Yeah.
And these old maps of the North Pole. Well, the North Pole we found out is the new residence of the Fifth Reich, and the tall whites have been there for a while. So are they giving us an impression of the image of where they're at? Is this something, or is this just something much older? But it's definitely something to be considered. And as I said, I was seeing these things, and I started looking around my home and seeing, little reflections of impressions from this imagery. And it could be all around us anyhow. There's a lot of things around us. We're just accustomed to seeing it. We're drawn to it. Certain shapes, certain designs, colors, symbology. And a lot of this is part of what is related to the program. The program uses symbols and images. So universally, it creates these triggers. So for me, the trigger was uncomfortable. I was trying to wrap my head around it, but I knew it was something that needed to be explored a little further. And I'm sure that people could look at these symbols and start seeing some other connections. But I thought it was very strange to see the Pokeball, and thinking about how that program is going very deeply into the consciousness of the younger generations. But not only that, how many adults were engaged in this game where they go searching for the Pokemon clues and going to different sites and so forth. It became a really big thing, and you wonder why. You know, what was
Well,
the
the
lure
Pokemon
to
Go
it?
seems to be just a way to pretty much make people comfortable with the transhumanism, which is merging true reality or human reality with a virtual reality and literally project yourself into that. Um, so yeah, I mean, the Pokemon Go has been downloaded. I don't know how, I mean, hundreds of millions of times. And those who are doing that, by the way, are giving full access to everything that pertains to them, bank account, everything. I mean, it's like you give your life away completely. It's absolutely insane, that whole program. And it seems that they are pushing right now through all these different, I'm sorry to have some noise here, but they are pushing definitely the division of, and breaking down bit by bit, piece by piece, the fragments, you know, what makes human consciousness and what made us human. By creating divisions between races, religions. First, they start also with the family by introducing the divorce in the 60s, the concept of divorce, breaking the family's unit, and then from there it's very easy after that to fragment a little more and more. Like I always say, it's like you have a big picture and you start to split it in 4, in 8, in 16, in 32, and slowly every piece that left you break it in parts. So it complexifies the problems. It's very hard to figure out what is the whole picture, original picture behind it. It's very hard to connect all the dots. Everybody is taking labels, all these different labels, trying to put people in boxes, when all that is part of a whole program of literally breaking down bit by bit what makes us human, or humanity, the very core of who we are, and to transfer that into that new concept, that new program, which is the AI program, where you literally disconnect from divine consciousness, divine connection, and pretty much connect to that one mind, one soul, one heart type of program, which is connected to that ball, which in the movie, the time traveler, they talk about it, like it is something that's pretty much contained. It's like the photon memory core of whole humanity. So now whole humanity memory and consciousness is contained into an AI ball that controls each and every one.
Absolutely.
It's like a hive mind type of consciousness. It's disgusting.
And I want you to look at this M, which is the monarch M, and the I.
And Michael.
Yeah. And when we looked at this article that was done by that place, the Magdalena, Lorraine, Lorraine, how do you say it?
Rennes le Château.
Rennes le Château.
Rennes le Château in south of France. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
They also talk about the M shape in some of the artwork in this article that I have, which I might have to stop and go look for a second, bring that in. But you could see it has like a feeling of like there's an eyeball looking at you, and they're letting us know that we're being watched. I mean, here is the eye, here's another. It's that whole feeling, the surveillance. Look at this right here. This is interesting. Yeah, it's very much in plain sight. So I'm going to do a comparison of the M, and we're going to hold that open there. So if we have to do an edit.
And remember that we also had that picture that shows all the different symbols, like for Gmail, the M also that's connected to the Masonic symbol and all that. I mean, each symbol that we have in our daily life are connected to something that's secret, occult, I would say. That literally, it's like I always say, they will take something and give it another name, right? Mm-hmm. But in the meantime, they love to show us what they're doing.
Okay, so in this article, and you see that there is a reference to a picture find it. Right here. Here is the M. Now Peter told me that that stands for monarch.
Wow.
And so you have the M, strangely, on the Pokemon. And there's the M. Peter also made mention of how things are skewed, showing how things are off. And you can see this, it's like a strange angle that it's at. Everything's just completely tilted and these odd, shapes. But the M being very, very distinguished could stand for Mary, right? And that could have been a hidden message, but it could also, like Peter said, that interesting enough, it's if you look at Monarch Solutions and in some places they have like an M. You can see the M is right in here. It's kind of cut in a way. But there is the M also. But there's different ways that they do it. But that is definitely, here's another. See the M there? But anyhow, so you kind of get an idea of getting us accustomed to looking at certain things, not thinking anything of it. It's done in plain sight. We have these circles reminding us of these little containments for whatever their intention is of creating, messing around with our reality. What we think is real isn't real. And so we're going to go more into a conversation and discuss it further. So that's the end of this part of the visual part. Hello everyone, and thank you for joining us today in Androna Talks. And so we're going to cover some really curious subjects that have been coming up regarding France, and one way or another it is a reflection of France in past, present, future, and maybe it can unlock some of the information regarding what this is all about. I talked to Peter a little bit about this, and Peter's going to go probably more I don't know what direction he's going to go into, but we did have a discussion a bit, and this is some of the stuff that I had already been looking at, and so we're going to take a look at it now. So I'm going to call it the curious things regarding zeros, the number 0 or 0, 2, and 3. If there's a 1, I'm not sure where the 1 is at. But right now we found some 0s, some 2s, and 3s. And the 0s relate to Magritte, who was a French artist, the turn of the century, of the 1900s or late 1800s, early 1900s. And the 2s regarding Mary Magdalene. And number 3 regarding a time travel experience in the year 333 and 8. 8 creating a loop of reality and something that I had experienced. So I'm going to bring in Chris, and he's going to discuss this with me. We're also going to be talking about the yellow vest. I mean, how could we not? And so there's going to be some, a kind of a blending of topics, all related, all things France. Okay? All right, so hi Chris, how are you?
Hi Jessica, how you doing? I'm good. It was an interesting 2 weeks, I guess, since the last report we did.
Yeah, and the things are moving, but do you find that there's some kind of, I won't say it's a loop, but it's sort of Macron is doing whatever he's doing, keeps bringing people back to like a square one. So they're protesting, they're doing all these different things, and then one or another, he seems to like create an anomaly of some sort, or make a decision, and then to try to throw them off. It's like it's strategic play, but unfortunately, strategic play against your own people, which is really strange to watch.
Well, yeah, it almost seems like, when you have a disc like these old LPs and you have a scratch in the disc, and they always have the tendency, the needle always have a tendency to go to the same point in the music, right?
Right.
It seems to be kind of something similar. It doesn't matter what's happening on the yellow vest side. They always bring it to the same point where it's pretty much status quo, when nothing is moving forward when it comes to their requests. At the contrary, it seems to be even going in the wrong direction in some way.
Peter talks about the movie Inception, and the French singer is included in that song, and she had a tragic life, I guess, but her music is now very memorable, not only to the French people, but to Americans and people around the world, because of that movie Inception. That Edith Piaf, is that how you say her name?
Yep, Edith Piaf, yeah.
Yeah. And so the whole thing of that music, when that music is playing, that there's something going on, or something's going to change, or they pull out of that mode of inception. I'm trying to remember the movie. But either way, it's all, why French? Why has it come back to France? And we talked about Mobius, according to Peter, they're originally in England. But what is this thing in France that we're seeing that's really very prominent? And we were looking through, we're going to go through some of this information afterwards about Magritte. Now let's talk a little bit about Magritte. And he brought in some very strange, surrealistic kinds of imagery. And in one of the sessions that I did, I got this information, insight, that he was working with these programs to bring in, maybe be the coder or someone that brings in the symbology for those that need to see it and find the information, the open door. And I mean, I could be wrong, but I'm really feeling that he was a participant of these travelers that we've seen off and on, and those working with Mobius or whoever they're working with, very likely it's with Mobius, and then bringing these clues, painting them, and leaving them there. Maybe Salvador Dali was in some way assisting in the process. But we see, but in particular with Magritte, we see, these kind of globes, this like circle object, and a sphere. And so to me, it looks, everything circles, right? O's, zeros, however you want to perceive it. But then also you're seeing, the crossing over into the realities. You see the blue skies or whatever, but then the blue skies are inside. You see the glass breaking in the mirror, and then the mirror is on the inside. And then it's still reflecting as if it's on the outside. So nothing is exactly as it seems.
Yep, no, absolutely. When you look at that because I studied Magritte when I was a kid at school, because he's a Belgian painter. But of course, we never studied that to that angle. And under the light of the different sessions we had, we start to see that Magritte was involved in something way deeper. Maybe being part of the White Coats, the scientist, part of John's lab, that in the future, that might have time traveled in the past, a group of them at least. And Magritte seems to be the one that pretty much lays all these codes or symbols or information for those who can read them, I guess. But now we have seen, under the light of what we know, we start to pretty much decipher all these different paintings with different meaning to each of them. And that's definitely related to the movie Inception, realities within realities, and some things like, for example, the spheres, which is for me unbelievable, because these spheres, I mean, you need to understand, he was born in 1898, and most of his paintings, he was around 25, 30 years old, 40 years old, around that time. So it was in the 1920s, and you have some of these devices in his painting that look very futuristic, that pretty much at the time they had nothing of that sort. I mean, even in the antique shops or whatever. So it sounds so strange, and even the titles of some of these paintings. I guess we're going to show some of them later on in the recording we just did about his paintings. But it triggered me when I was watching a movie. First, we were watching that in one of my sessions, just remember, and we were looking at some of these paintings, and you were telling me at the time that it was very strange because you could see pretty much some of the things you have in your house that look very close to some of these things. Now, when I was looking at those pictures, there is one thing that for me really struck like really clearly was these white spheres. And I knew these spheres from somewhere. It's almost like subconscious mind know it, but you cannot put your finger on it. And it's only later in a movie that I watched maybe a week and a half ago, 2 weeks ago, called The Time Traveler. It's a movie from 2012, I guess. And in that movie, the guy goes to a museum and supposed in the future, his future from the 1800s, it goes into the 2030 in New York, in the Library of New York. And here we go, library, right?
Right.
And in that library, and people will, I guess you will explain a little later what's important in the library. But in that library, it's all futuristic, where you have some books pretty much as archives, but there is a guide there, like an AI guide, that's just, you see these plexiglasses, and AI guides show up. And when that time traveler comes in and see that big sphere, the exact same one you see in the painting of Magritte. And when you ask what it is, the guy says, well, this is a photon memory core. This is pretty much holding the whole memory of all humanity. Now, what is interesting when you put that in versus what's happening with the painting in Magritte's painting, you see that some of these paintings, he showed these 3 spheres floating in the air, and it called that painting the voice of space. What can that be? For me, it sounds very AI. But then
or the capturing of the conscience of a human and placing it in there.
Exactly, because there's another picture when you see a white head, that's like just the head of a white statue, right? And then some blood on the side, like if there is a memory loss, and then you see that sphere on the side, and the name of that painting is Memory 2, meaning pretty much a transfer of the memory of human memory into that technology, AI ball, I would say, that's very clearly related to that clip of the movie that we're going to put as a in the comment section, I guess, or under the description. But I mean, it's so obvious that even if you really don't want to see the connection, it's impossible to not see it. So clear.
It is, and it's clearly depicting, some of the things that we've been talking about, and how their intention of the future is to take the conscience of humans and put it into an android body, or in this case, it's in a sphere. I know that there was a few things around me that I was actually starting to pick up this energy and didn't realize. I had this picture that was given to me with, and we'll show that image of it's like a couple and they're unraveling, and there's all these balls around them. So they're actually coming apart, but maybe the memory is being stored in these balls, and this is part of this style of artwork of the time. But here it is. It came to me, and I'm looking at and they actually look like they're statues of God and Goddess. And yet there is, it's almost like their face is turning into like a ribbon, like as if someone just cut it out, and part of it's just like floating, as ribbons going around, unraveling of the face. And of course, like I said, these little balls showing. just reflection of the conscience or the mind that's left of them. And so that brought me to this time period of, I think we were talking about the year, I had this vision of the year 3,338. So there's 333 and 8, which reminded me of like a loop or of an infinity. And there was, I walked into this hallway, and there were those big, huge containers, kind of like you would see with androids inside of them, made with some kind of plasma. And the plasma was slightly greenish in tint. And noticing them on either side as I walked in through this doorway, and they're on either side, and they're large, like a holding capacity made of glass, kind of like a test tube shape, but of course could fit a whole human body in there. But there were no bodies in there. It was all plasma. And I walked forward, and there was someone there that was kind of like the librarian, like, you know, you said in that movie, but he was calling himself Amble, which I mentioned to Peter, and he believes the name should have been Abel. And I looked at these containments, and I knew that inside of them, in that plasma, was memories of humanity. Like, and each one wasn't one soul. It felt like it was a collection of souls, or not souls, but memories. Almost like it was a historical data collection in separate containments. It was very, very strange. And they told, and this Amble told me that someone by the name of Pierre and Corinne, now here's French names again, showed up and was taking what was inside of these containers and then creating a being out of them. Or they were doing something, and I couldn't help but think it was Monarch or Mobius that was involved in this. And then they say something like, there was something that was R41-X, which could be Rex, and you said that it was probably another name for king in Latin.
Yep.
I don't know if this was a program or, had to do with whatever it had to do with, but it was some kind of, I don't know if it was an operation or something. I don't know, it's very, very, very strange. But anyhow, You see the sequence of 3. So with Magritte, you see a lot of circles. And with this one, it was sequence of 3s, but yet there's this collaboration of the past and the future, and pulling some of this stuff together, all coming from the same area. I would say, if it's named Corinne and Pierre, who was involved in doing this, and was Magritte somehow involved in some of these activities of whatever is happening, throwing off the balance of timelines, space, realities, these time travelers, what are they doing and how are they altering things?
Yeah, and this is why the library is important here, because it was a library of information, holding information. Now, in the clip of the movie, the guy explained that it's a photonic memory. It's not like a memory like we can have a memory on a computer. It's a photonic memory. And I know there is something about the plasma AI that we talked a lot about, lately. And I cannot stop thinking of that transfer that's going on, what that was, the memory into that ball, as well as Magritte showing his painting. It's pretty much disconnecting humans from their, the connection with their divine soul. and pretty much it's transferring pretty much that connection into that ball that would be an AI hive mind, collective mind.
Right. So it felt like it was kind of like, they talk about the Alexandrian library. This looked like a future memory that was used by many of the souls that had died. I didn't feel like it was a containment of souls, but actual memory of those souls. So in some ways, it was a collaborative, possibly. I didn't feel like it was each individual, but I could be wrong. And it's something like AI water component, human data, human data, mind extraction, something like that. So that there's this, I don't know what the purpose of that future experience, and I don't know if it's a pocket reality or whatever it is, but that's something that came up. And I'm sure that Peter's going to have a different take on it, but I think, or maybe not, because I was actually surprised that what I was looking at was, something else. It's really, really strange stuff. I'm over here looking at this other thing. I think it was a fire in England. I think it was 1666 or 1660 something, September 6th. So some crazy numbers, crazy number stuff. And I don't think it's an accident. So, and then it brought, and the thing that's interesting is Peter always talks about the umbrella group, and you see these men floating from the sky with umbrellas, wearing these suits.
I know.
Yeah.
And all these men with these black hats, these, I don't know, there's a name for these type of hats, like look like
bowler, and they call it a bowler cap.
In black suits all the time.
There was something that I think Magritte did. He had, I think it was him that had a bunch of men dressed with a bowler hat, or someone did it, and they went into a museum, and then they were walking around. They felt like they were being watched, so they brought in a bunch of others. Maybe that was more contemporary, and it kind of threw everyone off. But somewhere in history, I have to say it was like a story of someone trying to dodge and hide.
There is something just I want to mention before I forget. You were talking about these Greek statues that are pretty much like defragmented, right? Mm-hmm. And I was wondering, it reminds me of what's happening with the mudflood, when they pretty much defragment and erase, our history, and recreate a complete different timeline that we learn at school, where Tartarus didn't exist literally, and especially the technology that was existing at the time, to create a world and a reality and timeline, I would say, where they can have full control. Now, this, I don't know if it's connected, just my thought here, but these men with the black hats seems to be in control of a lot of things in this painting. They're always in the center of these paintings of Magritte. Right. And I cannot stop thinking of that video of New Earth when that woman talked about the parasites and those men that are in control. Now, when you look at the picture of the mudflood just a little bit after 1812, where you see all these huge mega cities like Rome, Sydney, New York, completely empty of every adult. And then you know that a little bit later, you have these hundreds and hundreds of thousands of children that suddenly are moved from one city to another. And then a few years later, you see the pictures when, these kids are literally working in factories, and they literally, they send them to school to learn pretty much, to program them into the new system pretty much. It seems to be like... But
the parents are absent, right? There's no parents left.
They disappear. Millions of people disappeared. You see cities like Rome empty in the middle of the day, empty. No cars, no people, nothing. All you see is children. There's a lot of video explaining and showing that. Now, what's interesting is that they keep the kids And these kids, they literally, send them to schools. And on each picture, you see these men with these black hats. So pretty much being the only adults that are controlling these kids. Mm-hmm. And later on, you see these kids growing and become the new generation that, will lead to, I guess our population right now. So what's interesting for me is when I see when you talk about that statue, the Greek statue, which is literally referring to the past, that they're dismantling it, like these Band-Aid, right? Defragmenting it. And it's empty.
Broken. Yeah, it's broken.
Yeah, broken. They're broken pretty much the memory, the database, our connection to the past, and recreating something new, and with that sphere, which is completely AI. So it's almost like erasing our memory, who we truly are, to recreate a new reality where we pretty much are all connected. And we can see now with all the cell phones and the 5G and all that's going on, into an artificial God or king.
They didn't choose to get rid of all the adults yet, but they found another way to get to the children and take over another generation. Mm-hmm. Bring in another program, because you remember I talked about, the Virgilians and some of the others wanting to create a separation between the different generations, and so there's a disconnect. So the humans can be further, fragmented and cut off from one another and block off communication. And I see them do that frequently, on many occasions. And of course, they do that culturally. They do that through gender. The male females are opposing each other instead of coming together. The different cultures, and same thing. People are fighting over certain things, and when they try to communicate over peace, there's a disconnect. And a lot of this stuff is infused. It's created. And you always have to, and when something like that's going on, I think our biggest mistake is to get focused on it, like the false flags. Everyone rushes to the false flags, because, and it's interesting to look at it, but what we need to do is have people rushing away from the false flags and seeing what other agendas are actually going on. And then that's where you're going to find the shiny thing, the object of attraction. And they know that those that, and I'm not saying to criticize anybody that is looking at wanting disclosure and wanting to know the truth. And we know, and within these false flags, you're finding out more and more information, but there needs to be others that are looking outside of it as well, because if that's that type, they're taking the risk of putting pretty much exposing themselves on what they're doing at a risk that something bigger is happening that they really don't want you to see. And so that's something that I think, and it's happening in France quite a bit.
Let's look here, don't look there. Really, that's what's happening. And the yellow vests are wonderful. I mean, it's a wonderful opportunity for these power in place to pretty much voted for all these laws that are against literally freedom. We call it liberticide in French, meaning killing freedom. Because while we're going to go in the yellow vest, I guess, a little later, but it's the same thing happening here. People are so focused on the few things that burned in Paris last week, and that nobody focused. The media certainly don't focus on really what's really happening. That's scary.
Right, and Macron is just playing games with people. So we're fluctuating from, it appears to be one topic to the next, but in many ways, it's the same thing. We know that there is an interference. We know that there are travelers that are messing with our reality, and the whole thing of the looping that's taking place right now. The looping of what's happening in France regarding the yellow vests. The yellow vests look like they're gaining some leverage, and then something else happens, something else steps in. It looks very artificial, like it wasn't supposed to be there in the first place. But it's like the master chess game that's being played outside of our timeline, and And it's definitely not God that's orchestrating it. I'll say it like that. So what is orchestrating this game, and what is the true agenda is just to slightly switch and turn and shift things into a direction. And the question is nobody really knows what the end game of that is. All I know is that in 333, the year 3333, or 38, is he telling me that there's some kind of weird loop going on, and that our future, in the direction of what we're looking at from this perspective right now, if we stay on this timeline, ends up in this weird reality where there's an absence of people and there's these containments. Now, I don't know what was outside of that facility, but there was a reason why I was brought there. So we need to shift out of that. Something's still not right, and there's still tampering, and as Peter says, there's this babushka effect, where it's a matrix within a matrix within a matrix playing it out. And so what we think we're looking at, we're not fully sure what we're looking at, because they've created a multi-level of realities that's distorting our full view and also altering our timelines. And they were calling it a gyrosphere. So this thing's in constant movement or flux or going, and they can't, how can I say it? If something is constantly moving and changing, it's hard to find a moving target, if you know what I mean. And so this as it's moving through these multi-matrices, and that's the way it looked to me, and someone could correct me on that, but that's the way I'm seeing it. But they called it not a gyroscope, a gyrosphere. So, and it enables them to control time, or control time in a way that suits them. And I don't know how they're able to do this, but it's creating quite a bit of, I mean, we look at the chronosphere. The chronosphere is some of this tampering with time. They've actually created some type of experience where they're moving within time and creating a sub-reality of time altering.
But here we talk about gyrospheres, right? The spheres that we talk
again. Yeah.
Magritte, yes, and the zero. I don't know. There is, of course, we're not, claiming that we know exactly what's going on here. We just, wanted to point a few things out and start to make some connections. It's a work in progress.
Yeah, it's the I mean, we could say it's binary, but it's not just binary, because there's multiple numbers that we're talking about here. And
it sounds very digital. It's all,
yeah, it's very, very digital. It's based on a number system sequence. And I'm looking at the Great London Fire time period, and let's see. And I, had a view of that, and I'm not prepared. Yeah, 1666, Thursday, the 6th of September. There's a 1666. Do you think that's an accident? It's not.
No. Well, first, that number is definitely very obvious. We all, a lot of people know that number 666, but yeah, it's not an accident.
No. I mean, I've seen something happen here, and I actually had a vision of how it happened, which were involved with monarch kids. Very, very strange. I don't like what they've done. I really, and
they have changed the timelines many times, right?
They change everything to suit themselves. What's convenient for them, and as Peter mentions, that they don't have a regard of destroying anything. It's almost as if they think they would not be affected. But whatever they're tampering with would affect them. But for some reason they're oblivious to it. And so my question to Peter is are they actually conscious? Can't be fully dealing with humans, because humans, to some level, realize their mortality in circumstances like that. I mean, if you're going to jump off a 2-story building, you know that there's going to be some repercussions. So tampering and doing experimentation, even when they were tampering with the atomic bombs and seeing what could happen, which is like what fool does an experiment on that grand of a scale without going past the lab and then introducing it on this huge scale, and it's really not knowing what it's going to do. And if they do know what it's going to do, then they're considered mass murders, right? But if they're tampering like that with the rest of humanity and attacking the atmosphere, attacking the earth, and affecting countless number of wildlife as well as humanity, then it's beyond criminal. And since when do we do experiments like that, where somewhere humanity lost its way and got influenced by something?
And sadly, it's not just one group, because we talk about the monarch kids here, but there are so many different groups involved in their own little experiences. I call it Frankenstein experiences. It's like a friend of mine said all the time. This is the highest violation there is on the divine sovereignty of human beings. This is a crime against humanity. It doesn't matter how you want to look at it. If it's mudflood, if it can be the monarch and Mobius experiences, Zoroaster, it doesn't matter. All of them for me are part of high crimes. This is the highest violation ever there is on humanity, and I don't care what anybody can say. That's my own personal opinion here, of course.
I agree. And there's another component to this conversation, and that's the use of religion and belief systems, and insertion of religion and belief systems in order to introduce something new. Peter believes that they're trying to introduce like a false Christ or something, and we know that there are certain ones that are many people that are claiming to be a real one, but there's definitely a part of a program of bringing something in, and so that brought us over to the Rock of the Magdalene. And there's this really great article that I think people might want to look at. We're going to have a link there, and I mean, someone has really spent the time to start looking at some very, very interesting things regarding artwork and this location where the legend of the Rennes-le-Château.
Yeah, Rennes-le-Château. It is very close to. It's in the middle of the place where you had the Catars, and also the castle where you had pretty much all the Templars. So it's a southeast of France. It's a very, very, very strange region. A lot of things are connected in history to that specific region, and it's also close to what some people refer to Stargate 12.
The person that created this website, Andrew Go, from the UK, it says andrewgo.co.uk, and Corjan de Raaf, who I think is from the Netherlands, and it was created in February 2007. I thought it was really interesting because now you see this, everything is 22. 22 steps lead to the platform of the Tower of Magdala, that with the adjoining orangery. 22 steps ascend a spiral staircase to the top of the Tower of Magdala. 22 degrees offset from the window. 22 is the feast day of Saint Mary Magdalene. I mean, everything, all these 22s. There seems to be, appears to have 2 ancient burials in the grotto. And I mean, he just goes on, both of them, describe everything. So you look at the grotto, you look at this tower, and then he goes on and starts talking about, the different people that were involved, that built the grotto. A priest by the name of Berenger Saunier, and
which is the main character in the whole story of Rennes le Château. To have a little, story, some people can have to, put things in context. That place was a very famous place in the Middle Age and even earlier in time, supposedly. But in the 18th century, it was a very, very poor, extremely poor little village. At the time, that priest was so poor, could barely, feed himself. And out of nowhere, they realized that it started to have a fortune. You can compare that now to pretty much going from food stamps to being a millionaire. And there was people try to understand how it happened. The thing is, he was most of the time doing everything he did he had a maid that was a little younger than him that participated to pretty much the whole process. And here is what's really happening. A lot of people had the feeling that he found a treasure, because there are so many different treasures that have been hidden in that area. We talk about the Catars. The Catars were, literally holding a huge treasure. That this is why the king at the time was so jealous of their power that he made sure that, to kill them all, build them all. And their castle is literally on Stargate 12. Also, you have another story saying that he might have found some artifacts, since at the time, earlier in time in the 1200s, a lot of the church, the Roman church, have pretty much started all these crusades to Jerusalem. Now, of course, we might say that won't be for a religious purpose, but there is also another agenda behind it, which was pretty much to steal a lot of artifacts and bring them back to Europe. Now, these Templars, especially the Templars, were the army of the church, and the Catars had definitely a lot of artifacts and a fortune in gold and precious stones. So none of these treasures had been found. So they were the story goes that maybe he might have found one of these treasures because they saw him literally digging one day out of nowhere into the cemetery and at night with his maid, and out of nowhere it starts to become extremely rich. So is it a treasure? Is it that he found some information about the fact that supposedly Jesus was not dead on the cross but came to France with Maria Magdalena, that was pregnant and gave birth to the line of the Merovingians, which is the French kings, a bit further in time, and then maybe we gave that information to the descendant living in that 19th century of their different connection with what called the blue blood, the Christ blood. So here again, we go into the subject of the Christ blood agenda. That I don't know if you ever touched about that in earlier report, but anyway, it might be too deep to go in that now. But
yeah,
there is a lot.
Well, I mean, there's the blood. All right, yeah. So I'm going to talk about that in another show.
No. Yeah.
That's coming out. Probably that Jimmy discussion. We get a little bit into how the blood can throw off your auric field and everything else in the vows, and taking of blood that people have done inadvertently or even just etherically with the Catholic, Roman Catholic vows and statements of taking the body and blood of Christ, which is etherically acknowledging and taking in something that's, I'm not sure, is something we're supposed to be doing. But you talked about something that he found, and here in this article, it says that they talk about the Magdalene Tears, which they talk about the tears being the rivers or something in the area. And then there is a relief of Saunier's altar is displayed in the bottom of what we know as the second parchment. And they show Noel Corbu pointing at Mary Magdalene's strangely crossed fingers. Below the bas relief is an inscription that is identical to the last phrase of the big parchment Saunier allegedly found in his church in July of 1887.
Yeah, I mean, but that's the thing. There is absolutely no proof of anything. Before the maid died, she promised to the person that bought that castle, because that priest died, Béranger. What was his name again? Béranger. I forgot his last name. Anyway, the priest died.
Darkati.
So when he died, his maid, lived another few years later, and then, that whole property was sold to another person, and that person was eager to know what was the secret. So obviously, she died before she could reveal the secret out of nowhere. She had a crisis. I don't know what type of crisis happened, but she couldn't speak, she couldn't write, and she died with her secret. So right now, all these people are doing, having all these kind of different opinion on what might happen. But all I know is there is definitely something way more than all these stories. Even these stories, I have a feeling, might have been made, again, the same thing, look here, don't look there. There is something way deeper than that, that hasn't been pretty much deciphered yet. But everything he did, like that tower with the 22 steps, 22 degrees from the window and all that stuff, seems to be a coding, like specific codes that might almost look, I wouldn't say alchemistry, but definitely a symbolic that's very important for those who can read it.
And it was deliberate, so that people would take note that there is a message within the message here.
Exactly.
So they didn't just do a construction, but then they also did it in a specific way, the way that, like the Da Vinci Code, is they left this trail of information. This is all Templar type of stuff, Cathars. All of them did secret codes, and they all had artifacts. They all had different pieces, because these were types of magic. Some of these things had sometimes even ET energy to it that enabled them to do certain things. And you even see Hitler, connecting to the Roman Catholic Church. And so that there's the artifact. I've seen Hitler connecting to the crystal skull. I did an interview regarding that, and had a discussion of a crystal skull called Wilhelm, and that was in one of my interviews that I did. I'm trying to remember the name of the interview. I'll put it in. I think it's called The Red Pill, and you'll see that here on YouTube. But anyhow, these are the type of things that have been going on for a long time as a collection. Why collect all these artifacts? These artifacts actually gave them some kind of abilities and power, but of course they usually have some kind of bad luck that comes along with it, like the Hope Diamond. You have it's kind of a good and a bad situation. So throughout history, you see this race for artifacts and hiding and secrecy and secret societies, and a lot of it, but it goes along with entanglements and other serious issues. So.
Mm-hmm. No, definitely it's more complex than you can look.
Yeah, and also in this article, there's a picture from Pietro Perugino and his family work, the Galtzin triptych, which he produced for the church in San Domenico in San Gimignano, which is actually where some of my family lineage comes from. So I was like, well, that's interesting. So I'm finding something very rarely do I ever see San Gimignano included. But I'm looking at the reason why they bring it up is because they create this picture, or it's some kind of artwork somewhere, and they literally have this artwork in San Gimignano, in Italy, but it has a Mary Magdalene type of pose. She's standing there, and behind her is that rock formation that's seen at the site. And it almost looks like a profile rock, if you know what I mean. It almost has a signature look to it.
Mm-hmm.
And so, that's another thing. But what, it's very distinct. I mean, this is definitely quite interesting in how they put it all together. Now, there's John van Scorel, who was a Dutch master who traveled through Europe, it says here, and he worked in Albrecht in Germany around 1518. And he does, some things regarding Mary Magdalene. What's interesting is Utrecht is mentioned, and that's where we recently had a false flag in the Netherlands. Van Scorel was called to Rome by the old Utrecht born Dutch Pope Adrian VI. So it's weird, And then it says, I know, and it says, for instance, as you read down further, for instance, the Nazis believed it to be a treasure map and linked it to Rene Le Chateau, as described in the excellent book Satan's Song by Karl Hammer, which is, another thing where they have the I believe it's the Devil's Armchair is there. There's also what's strange about this location is they have this sculpture of Asmodeus, who looks like a demon. It's like, yeah. What is the purpose of this? What are these messages that are supposed to be reflecting something according to a bloodline, a Christian connection, but yet, feeling more Masonic, feeling like there's other agendas involved, and kind of like for those people that like to look for little pieces of, little nuggets of information of, kind of hidden messages within the message. And so you have all of this stuff that's right here. It's everything that, kind of, we see that these doors are open, these portals are open, this time travel has happened, and here is France in a strange predicament of repeating the whole Napoleonic experience, the whole point of unjust behavior of their king and ruler, and we're trying to find a resolve, but we see a pattern. And so it forced us to dig a little deeper and see if there was anything else around it that could be causing the problem.
You said something about the rock, right? And suddenly the flashes, I had that flash of that painting of Magritte, when you see that stone, that rock floating in the air with that ball, that white ball, digital AI ball on the top of it. So I don't know if it's connected, but here you have the rock. That is also very, very interesting. Now you said also René Le Chateau instead of Rennes Le Chateau. That was interesting, like Rene Margritte. I don't know.
All right.
Which is René the Castle, if you translate in English. Now we talked about the castle before too. Yeah. I know it might be very confusing. I don't want to be confusing for the listeners. It seems like we jump from one to another, but it's almost like the picture I got is like if I see a tree, right, with all the branches and the leaves, and I hide the trunk, and all you see are just leaves floating in the air. They seem completely disconnected from each other, right? But once you remove what's hiding the trunk, which is connecting everything, suddenly we have an understanding that all is connected. it's pretty much what's going on here. I mean, we talk about different subjects, but they have a connection. We still don't know what it is, but they have a connection. So I just want to say that so people don't feel like, wait a minute, these guys are crazy. When did they smoke here? They don't go to nothing.
Yeah, unfortunately, nothing. I find that none of that stuff has helped me, so I stay away from it.
Yeah.
But it's bad enough I see what I see. I don't want to see anything weirder than what it is or distortion of what it is, because it's trying to sort through it, as you know, it can be quite complex. But another thing that Magritte has in his pictures is a lot of apples. And here you're looking at, there's another picture by Nicolas Poussin, one of the 4 seasons, the autumn of grapes from the Promised Land. And I'm not quite sure why he brought this picture in. I think it also is linked to this. And they refer to the autumn of the grapes of the Promised Land from 1662 paints an odd scene, indeed. In an age before genetically manipulated food, 2 men carry a bunch of giant grapes, and then he calls them blue apples, to a rock in a landscape that closely resembles the small valleys we are examining near the stream of the Ruisseau des Couleurs. Is that how you say it? All these French words.
Ruisseau is like a small little stream.
Yeah, so the near the same stream, I guess, in the same location, and then blue apples. So there's all those apples that Magritte paints. You know, usually putting the apple right in front of their face, like, you know, here it is.
Well, but the apple, can it be? I don't know. It's a stretch here, maybe, but can it be connected to the fruit of knowledge that they talk about in the Bible? The apple.
Yeah, I mean,
I don't know.
The tree of good and evil. Yeah, the betrayal, the deception of the snake. You know, brings it right back down to, you know, is this a deception of saying one thing and then it's another? There is earlier in another of the pictures, it shows an image that was painted by Jean van Scorel, and it's supposed to be Mary Magdalene, and in Hebrew around her collar it talks about her having a child, a man, a woman, and a child. The figures beneath the rock, and there's the particular rock again as seen in the picture, and then you see in Hebrew, it's kind of leaving a little breadcrumb or a little hidden message that she has a child. It's supposed to be Mary Magdalene again. So it's almost like everyone knows, but they don't want to. They can't talk about it for some reason.
Well,
or
yeah,
they're hiding it.
The story says that he had pretty much the information that Mary Magdalene and Jesus didn't die on the cross like the religion was talking about, that he came to France and that they had children over there. That's pretty much, like I said, the ancestor of the bloodline of the Merovingian, which were the first kings of France, literally. So, of course, that would kind of defeat the purpose of the whole teaching of the religion, the Christian religion, saying that, you know, Jesus died on the cross. So, of course, he made an enemy of himself with the Roman Catholic Church. Now there is a lot of, sorry for the noise, guys. I put myself on mute for a second, okay? Yeah, people have big trucks here. So it seems that there is a lot of stories if you travel in France, and I've been traveling quite a lot over there, where maybe 100 miles further west in a place called Dordogne, which is in the bottom part, middle of France, but the bottom south part of France in the middle, and it's called the Valley of Humanity. And there is a river, and along that river you have different caves. And one of these caves, they call it the Maria Magdalena cave, when supposedly when she came from what we call Israel now, she came to France, to Marseille, which is a city in the south, a port, and then she traveled towards that place where she supposedly died. So we don't know if it really happened, but there's a lot of places where they talk about Maria Magdalena. There's a lot of traces, I would say, in history. They talk about her being in France.
Right. I mean, but what else are we missing here, you know? And what are they trying to bring in?
Well, obviously, I mean, as they said, as the guide said, obviously that Rene was a time traveler, part of a team. And in his painting, it seems to have a lot of symbol codes, I would say, or symbols, call it as you want, that are giving information for those who can read it. Now we see so many different things in this painting that are related to the different things we're talking about, different subjects, past, future, and present. So I don't know here what's the common thread, but obviously there is a common thread. Like we said, there is definitely some agenda up there, some group beings, whatever, that are controlling the matrix, the matrix as a loop. That we can see happening over and over and over throughout, the different events happening here. It can be in France or anywhere else. It doesn't matter what you do. It's almost like it's always a loop going on until we break that loop.
Till we find out what is actually trying to reveal to us what's going on and to stop. Maybe in some ways, whatever is happening in France and the yellow vest is a reaction to something that's trying to be revealed and opening the doors to show us this is the area that has some of the information, and that is going to help us to find some of the solutions to the anomalies that are taking place. And we call it the Mandela effect, we call it the inception, the dream, the matrix within the matrix, the babushka effect. Mm-hmm. However you perceive it, there's all these different things happening. And it's bringing us back to this one area, which is also connected to the EU, which is also, connected to whatever agenda is that they're trying to bring in regarding a one world order, an apocalyptic event. It's always leading back into this whole same scenario. And then, of course, the thing that happened over in Christchurch, which is, significant in Christchurch, New Zealand, just the name alone, that it's trying to open up something.
Yep.
That comes over here, and why simultaneously are these things happening? And so it's for a bigger agenda.
Well, I guess, for us that do not know all these symbolic that are, used in Freemasonry and all these secret groups, they love all these symbolics and all these codings and secret message. Since some of these groups are definitely working with all these mystery schools, ancient mystery schools knowledge. So yeah, it seems that it's hard for us to understand. But what I see is like we're going like a lasagna, layer by layer. We go deeper and deeper, and every time we do a report, there is more things that are revealed, even if we just kind of like figuring out all these connections. But layer by layer, we start to unravel all these illusions, these deceptions, step by step. So I know it's not today. Maybe we're going to find out what is the very core to be able to decode whatever needs to be decoded, so we can break that loop. But definitely, it's going in that direction. That's for sure.
Yeah, and the multiple sequences of numbers, possibly unlocking something like a master, like this vault of somewhere, and they have this combination of numbers.
Yeah,
And maybe it will amount to an unraveling, a great opening of something else, and not of anything that's harmful to humanity, but to helpful. This is the direction that we're heading in, is to counterbalance whatever of the imbalance that has been occurring, and try to bring some logic to it, and some revealing or unveiling of what has been going on. So,
just one thing, Jess. It seems that, of course, people might say, well, why France? Well, if you go to Rene Margritte, it's part of that team of white coats of scientists that were part of Jacques and John's lab in the future that was located in France. So that's a starting point where the whole thing started, pretty much when they went back in time, started to time travel, and obviously start to shift things.
Well, I remember that one night we were looking at Magritte and just kind of shocked. Completely shocked at all of these different time travelers that we felt, had an awareness of what was going on, but somehow were playing out their role, and then, having these levels of communication. And it was very clear to me that, the interference, and, everyone's like, well, we're looking to God to take care of this or take care of that. And if someone told me 20 years ago that these are humans that have been tampering with their timelines, I would have said, this is crazy. I mean, I would think that any God is greater than that, the way we look at things, and we do want to have faith, we do want to have hope, and we do want to believe that there is something greater than all of this insanity and this nonsense and this tampering, and that we have a consciousness and we have a purpose here, and that we don't need to be in fear. But at the same time, closing our eyes is what is perpetuating the problem. And I asked Peter straight out, and you could see there was 2 interviews that I did with him, and I had a problem doing other interviews afterwards, because I just felt like I needed to think it through, not just for everyone else, but for myself. So one of the things that he said is, if people refuse to look at it, then it's not going to go away. It's not going to solve the problem. We have to see it. We have to acknowledge it. And, he said to me today that people probably are not aware and not ready for this type of information. That's might be part of our challenge, is a lot of people are not ready for this type of information because they're still trying to figure out things that have been talked about 5 years ago. Not everyone that listens to the YouTube channel here, but the general public, there's still, their idea of disclosure is really, really old information. And so they're just kind of wrapping their heads around that, and that's fine. It's wherever you're at least if you're trying to understand and have an awareness. But I said, it's like, planting something, a seed. And even though at this time it doesn't make any sense, eventually it grows into something where it starts to come together and take form. And so the seed being the pieces of information that start to click for people, just like, people started to help others to look for false flags, to see through some of the trickery that has been going on around us, help us to open our eyes and look at some of these things that some people find are really obvious, but the rest of us, we're looking at it and say, no, I didn't even notice that until you pointed it out. And so helping us to see through these illusions. We're getting, there's a lot of really amazing people on YouTube right now, and they're bringing up some interesting things, while the rest of the world is sort of getting lulled to sleep. So even if you don't fully get it right now, it's okay. And trust me, I don't fully get it, and I know that, some people question where my information is coming from, and that's fine too. It is playing out, whether we like it or not. And honestly, I didn't create it. I'm the seer, and so that I'm able to see it. And also, Chris has levels of insight in seeing, and so we often have discussions. He can see some things as well, and so with multiple people bringing up different ideas, where one person's blind, another one has an awareness, and that's where we're at. This is, for me, has nothing to do with grandstanding or proclaiming that I know everything. Just the opposite. I just want to get the information out, and so you'll see that I try to just provide whatever it is, even if it sounds bizarre. I know that at some point it has some significance, and there are people that do contact me and say they know what I'm talking about. They've experienced it. They didn't understand fully what it was, and they thank me for bringing the information forward, because some of them think that they're imagining things, or they're trying to sort through what they're picking up, or they're getting it in their dreams. So as I said, this is about helping everyone to wake up, helping everyone to kind of resolve or find a resolve of what's going on, and to eliminate this slave system that has been imposed upon us. And we're digging ourselves out of this hole through knowledge, through insight, and through awareness. So let's stay aware, stay open, and even if you don't understand something, like I tell people, just put it aside, make note of it, but don't get hung up over that. Just keep open and do your research. Look around. Some of this you can't research, but there are others that will come in and validate certain pieces of information that we talk about. But this is a kind of not a non-traditional show. Here again, we're jumping around a bit. Sorry if it was not as clear. I think the point that we're bringing up is that this is some kind of weird matrix. We're seeing sequences of numbers regarding each one of these agendas, and a lot of it is coming out of this same area. So, and with a religious aspect to it.
And what's interesting in the process here, just got that right now, it's not like some people will do a whistleblower will just give an information and pretty much like a little like a mommy bird give food to the baby birds. You just have to swallow it and that's it. Here it's a process, and I like the fact that the listeners can go along with us, and from week to week, report to report, they participate to the whole process of starting to making all these connections, and it's almost like they go along with us as we start to have more information and unraveling things and discovering things for ourselves. We can share it with them. So it is not that we are giving information and just need to go with it. It's a whole collective. I mean, we work together in this, It's a whole teamwork. But like you said, some people will have the information and be like, oh, wow, okay, that's great. I'm not crazy, obviously. It tells me that I have that feeling in subconscious mind, pretty much. You cannot say what it is, but you feel like an unrest because you need to know the truth about something. You just know what is the problem. But here we start to, in this process, which is great, it's like with the transmissions, When I went back in the because I started transmission pretty much after 2 years of transmission. That's when I started. And when I decided to go back from the beginning and re-listen to it, suddenly I start to see slowly, step by step, transmission by transmission, each piece of the puzzle that you were receiving and sharing at the time, and how it started to create a whole picture. You know what I mean? It's like making a puzzle, literally. As you go, it starts to create a picture that's more clear and clear. But we need, this is why it's not easy, because if you go back to the transmission, one of the transmission, it was clearly said that, we discovered that in the sessions too, that Zoroaster went into the foundation, literally, of creation to change a few things here and there and tweak it to its advantage, to what he wanted to create it, right? And so, I mean, it's not happening just on this level. This level is just a reflection of what's happening on higher levels. So this work is not just on this level. It's happening it's multidimensional work, if I could say. It's a whole process. This is why we're not alone in this. I mean, definitely not. Our guides are definitely giving some clues here and there and helping us through the process. But even they don't give everything in once.
Right, and with the advent of time travel, it opened up doors that are essentially unimaginable, and some very, very bad misconduct as well. And so, we talk about beings like Zoroaster, ETs meddling with our timeline, our realities. And now we have humans, then we have androids, we have super soldiers, and government agendas, all sorts of things happening. And so it becomes very, very tricky, very confusing. And for people that are trying to reveal and open up this information, it becomes very dangerous as well. So, yeah. And because people would say, well, I don't see any danger in the type of stuff that you're doing. And, I talked to Peter and I said, so are we in any kind of danger talking about this stuff? And he says, we're all in danger. He just recently talked about, someone trying to harm him recently. And so, it does happen. And just a side story. Chris, I don't know if you're open to sharing this, and if you're not, I completely understand. But talk about, because we've done quite a few sessions together, and you know about a lot of different things that go on. But because of that, and because of some of your own personal history, you've been kind of exposed to things, and so here you are, working your 9 to 5, and as a salesperson. And then you had a very, very strange encounter.
That's the minimum I can say. It all started, I guess, when I started to disentangle myself through the sessions and starting to, moving forward and clearing myself. Obviously, every time we're starting to unravel things, another layer was coming. And then, of course, a lot of what people can call attack or whatever, targeting. So that's not something that's kind of new for me. But there is definitely an acceleration in the momentum, I would say, since we go deeper and deeper into the core of, what we're talking about here.
Your soul history or whatever, right?
My soul history.
Disentangling yourself from these things that we're essentially trying to manipulate.
Right, just reclaim my divine sovereignty. And of course, some groups are not very happy about that, but who cares? And so this last few weeks, it started a few months ago when suddenly my whole business started to get completely stuck. And we worked a lot on that and trying to figure out what happened. So of course, a lot of timelines were changed as I was going to try to block me, this and that. But these last 2 weeks really reached a point where before it was in the background, it was not too visible. We just felt the effects. But now it's literally in my face. So it started like 2-3 weeks ago when I received a phone call. And normally, I never pick up phone calls like that. People leave a voicemail and then I see what's going on really. Because, all these marketing stuff. So that day, I don't know why, I feel like, okay, I'm going to call that person back. And it was one of the stranger conversations when you have that subconscious feeling like, something is completely off here. That person is not right. But, in the frame of mind of, business, you're like, you gentle, you just, you want to be courteous and professional. And that person started to, in the beginning, ask me a lot of questions, but these questions didn't make any sense in my business. So I tried to figure out if it was a customer or if it was someone messing with me. And at the end, he told me, we are way more powerful than you are. and your company, and we're going to bring your company down. And I was like, whoa, okay. Not a very courteous conversation. And I was a little shocked. So we talked about that, and obviously it was not human. It was definitely something like a demon or something like that. It was definitely talking to me, I guess, at the time. So I moved forward, and I'm thinking, all right, it's okay. Let's just go day by day to different appointments I have. And last Saturday, they gave me a last-minute appointment from that very company that guy was talking about that I work for, because I work for different companies. And they gave me an appointment at 8 o'clock in the morning. And I'm thinking, that's very early. I mean, it's very strange. So I drive over there an hour, and I go to the house, ring the bell, and the person is not answering. So I call the person, and she's telling me, well, I'm there in a few minutes. And anyway, it led to the point where I decided to meet her where she lives. And she says, yes, okay, come and see me. So I park my car, and here comes a lady, Afro-American lady in the 30s, and she looked at me like I'm a piece of meat. And I'm thinking, well, that's very uncomfortable. And when she started talking, she says, here you are. Well, our father was told me that, that it would bring you to me. And I was thinking in my mind, oh, so your father is living in that house I just went. She says, no, not my father, our father. I was like, okay. And our father told me that he will bring you to me to reward you for your great work. And I was a little slow, I guess, at that point, because it's so obvious in your face that it takes you a while. It's like you can count, like, what's going on here?
She's thinking, like, who's our father? We're not related. What do you, yeah.
Yeah, I'm like, okay, we're not related here. And she says, well, father told me that he wants to reward you for your great work. And something told me at that point, do not get into the house, which I normally sit down with them. Do not get into the house. And then she goes on and she says, well, so, I'll ask a question like, okay, so to go part of this program, you need to tell me, what is your income, annual income? She says, oh, my income is unlimited. And then I look at the house that looks like crap. And I'm thinking, okay, something is off here. And she's telling me, no, really, it's unlimited. I own everything. And then she looked at my t-shirt and said, see your company there? I own it. The money you make, I own it. All the money in the world, I own it. It's all mine. At that point, I knew, okay, maybe time for me to get out of here as soon as possible, because this is definitely something I've encountered. And I've done this job for a long time. My whole life I've been, in sales, and I've never encountered something that's obvious in my face, telling me literally that she was owning, the planet, the people, the money, everything. First, she said our father, but then there is no father anymore. She was it. She was God. So when we start, talking about that in the next session after that, we discovered that obviously she was not human. And there was a little more to what she proclaimed to be. And it has nothing to do with the divine source, that's for sure. But it became so obvious that instead of to be in the background, and normally I feel the effect energetically, this time it was really my face. They really wanted to show me who's the boss. And of course, that doesn't work, because I remember saying to her in her face when she said, you belong to that. I said, no, I do not consent. I do not agree. Shut down and install delete right now. In her face, because at that point I was like, okay, this is it. If I don't say anything, I don't want to be entangled with any of that crap. So they try, they push. I mean, it's every day I have stories. I mean, so many times we call each other, and then there's always something new happening every day.
This is pretty extreme, but this is the kind of stuff that I hear in the background usually. Like I knew someone was having problems with like a superior, like an authority figure, and I looked and I could literally hear that being screaming from the background, and then it was manifesting through a person. And that's what they do. They find a soul or a human who's, there's a vacant soul, or there's, the soul has been hijacked to some degree, and they become the voice piece.
Yeah,
It's just like I said, who you're talking to is not who you think you're talking to. And this is what throws people off, because they take everything at face value. And unless you're able to step back and say, wait a minute, who am I actually having a conversation with here? And what is this about? And so, whether it's manipulations of monarch, and I've had people just show up and they start telling these stories, and it's so weird, like how would they have the information? And it's not like they're psychic. It feels like there's actually someone else there using them as a puppet.
Yep.
It's very bizarre.
It reminds me pretty much, in the movie The Matrix, when John Smith can appear in anybody's around Neo, and access to anyone at any time. And I have a friend of mine that always tells me she can see them literally jumping from one body to another and literally taking over for like a minute. And suddenly the person start to do some crazy things or say some crazy things. And then she sees that being coming out of it. Yeah, they're gone. And the person like, what just happened? Yeah.
But they've sold out to some degree to be able to be used like that. Mm-hmm. And it's a trade-off, They get the good job, the good car, And I'm not saying this is everyone, but, they get what they want. But the deal is that they have to stay open for these beings, entities, or whatever they are to step through. But I'm also finding that, and there've always been these entities throughout the time of humanity that have been manipulating, and sometimes in history it's been worse than others. But now we also have corporations doing it and AI. So it's gotten complex, because sometimes I'm looking at stuff and saying, that's an entity, that is definitely AI,
Oh, yeah.
There was someone that sent me a message that, they were talking like in all computer terms. I'm like, that's not right. There's something wrong there, and humans don't talk that way. And then there's also, there's agenda-related ones, which I feel like is more the monarch type of thing, where they have certain people come in, and of course those that are working with the love bite programs and certain different types of species regarding that. So it's really very strange, and people who are, what they call truthers, or people that are trying to do the right thing, they're constantly looking to hijack those people and replace them to be able to get people off the track of disclosure and bring them into something else. And they're constantly trying to destroy people's lives or make them unhealthy or whatever to get them off the track so that they're not disclosing information anymore. So it's constantly a point of protection and watching out, because honestly, the people that are trying to get the information out there, they're willing to put themselves out there to bring in the information. The problem is if they get replaced or hijacked or something like that, majority of the people won't notice it. So then the people that were following them originally, this is the challenge, people that were originally following them, and they don't know if it's the same person. And if you have those questions and wondering, and it's unfortunate, I don't understand it, and I really do ask that the souls get returned back to the body if something like that's been happening, if they've been traded out or whatever, because there has to be levels. Someone has to speak up for them. And also, in agreement, I ask that all of you do the same. Those people that you feel have been compromised in some way or another, help, instead of just like shutting them off and say, or getting angry at the fact that they're, being used in some way. Just ask that their true soul be returned, and that the human aspect that wanted to do good in the beginning has a chance, is assisted in some way. And so let's try to work together rather than, notice that I don't like to put others down. I mean, I know it's not easy, but I also know that there are trolls out there too, and sometimes I have to put my foot down with the trolls, and I really don't have much patience with them. But the others that really want answers, I try to answer the best that I can and make it like an open space for people to come in and have a discussion if they want. So I don't know. Yeah. I guess we're really all over the place now, but we're explaining, you know, how these things can come in and that nobody, I don't think anyone's immune from being attacked when you're trying to open up to this information. But also it helps us to go through daily life if we realize that when strange things are happening, it's because strange things are really happening. And it's okay. You don't have to check your mind or think that there's anything wrong with you. That it is unusual. It's a very, very tricky time to live in right now.
Oh yeah,
and that's why, you know, I think it's good to support each one of us in this interesting journey. But also, you know, let's continue to send support to France to open up whatever this information is. I'll be doing an interview with Peter and James, and hopefully that brings in some more insight, which I'm sure it will.
Yeah, another layer of information, absolutely. But do you want to touch just a few minutes about France, what's going on now since the last report we did? Or you want to do that in the last? Okay.
No, go for it.
So last weekend was the biggest protest that they were planning for a month, where all France was gathering in Paris because they wanted to really show the numbers. So they all gather, they pretty much gather in different places and then all converge to the Champs-Élysées, which is the main, you know, the main avenue, like you say, Fifth Avenue in New York. There were 240,000. That was just in Paris, but then some others that couldn't travel because of lack of money or whatever were still doing their protest in different cities of France. But for some reason, even if the government knew in advance, a month in advance, where they would go, for some reason, they decided to play with the fact that suppose the UN and the European community condemned France for the usage of their flashball, which is these rubber bullets shooting people and, you know, losing eyes and all that, and these tear gas grenades, which is when it comes, I mean, to your feet, it looks like a tear gas grenade, but a few seconds later, it exploded like a TNT thing. So a lot of people, most of the time, had they were used to grab it and just throw it back to the cops. But now we have a lot of people, and it's not funny. I'm sorry, it's nervous, but it's almost like people. A lot of people lose feet and hands, and I mean, it's really, really bad what's going on. So the whole world community is pretty much condemning France for that. So instead of France being like, oh, wow, you know what, maybe we should, you know, lower our level of aggression on the protest, they decided to turn it into the advantage. So out of nowhere, when normally just to get to the center of Paris, you were pretty much stopped 5-6 times by the police, checking your bags and everything. Suddenly, nothing, no control whatsoever. People could just go freely towards the Champs-Élysées, which was already like a red flag, like, that is very strange. It's okay that, you know, they lower a little bit the level of aggressivity towards the yellow vest, but that there is no control at all. What's going on? And suddenly, 1,500 black blocs, or Antifa, you want to call it, came from pretty much all over Europe. And they gathered in the Champs-Élysées out of nowhere. So since there was no control whatsoever, these guys could freely come in and start their exactions, which is they start to burn these kiosks that sell newspaper, like you can find in New York. They start to burn, break completely shops, so Hugo Boss and all these fancy shops, break everything, stealing all the clothes, all the goods inside. I mean, really bad. And then they burned one of the symbol of the elite in France called the Fouquet. Fouquet, it's a restaurant for extremely rich people. They broke all the windows and, you know, Anyway, so these guys were there to break things. Now, while the yellow vests were pretty much at this point saying, well, you know what, for 17 week, we are trying to stop these guys. But right now, since we have no answer whatsoever, maybe they're right. Maybe this is the only answer. They didn't do these violence themselves, but they didn't want to stop them. When they went to the cops, they were literally 300 feet from these guys breaking windows and burning things. They were like, hey guys, can you please intervene, because this is nothing to do with what we do, with the message. The cops were like, sorry, we have orders to stand down, which is another red flag. But the cops had ordered to tear gas, for example, the street medics. Street medics are these people, regular citizens, that most of the time have some type of medical knowledge, and they decided to wear a white t-shirt with a red cross on it, with a helmet, and they buy themselves all the band-aids and all the products with their own money, and most of the time, they are there to help or wounded yellow vest or even wounded police. They are there for everyone. Now the police was not going after the Antifa, they were going after the street medics. Go figure out that one. So nothing makes sense. It was completely surrealistic, like in Rene Margritte. All right, nothing is where it's supposed to be.
Right. No. You can see it's pretty evident that there's agenda-based tactics.
Yeah. Now, what is even better is that while they knew that big protest happened and Paris was on fire, Macron decided to go on a ski vacation. Right? So while the protest was happening, he was sending pictures of himself skiing, having good dinners, enjoying life. So imagine, we talk about the president of France. So that showed very clearly, even the media didn't know that normally work for Macron. Were embarrassed, like, okay, well, that's not a good message here. It clearly shows that he doesn't give a damn. At the contrary, his arrogance, like, I don't care. I'm enjoying my life. I'm destroying France, but it doesn't matter. And his prime minister, which is chief of the police, that same night was found in a nightclub at 11 o'clock at night, kissing another woman than his wife, drinking, dancing, and partying. So everybody's like, wait a minute, what's going on? Even the cops were like, hey, that's our chief. He doesn't give a damn about anything. Here we are 18 weeks in a row having no vacation, no overtime paid, nothing, and they're partying. What's going on here? Well, what people don't understand is that while all this was happening and the news are bombarding right now the yellow vests saying, and that's the narrative all across the news, the media, is, well, because of the violence that happened, all yellow vests are considered as violent. No. On 240,000, 1,500 black blocs that were literally let in Paris without any blockage. They know that the Secret Services know exactly where these guys live, where they meet. They have access to their website. They knew exactly what's going on. They didn't do anything to stop it. It's almost like it was good for Macron agenda. Let these guys break everything, so now we can blame everything on the yellow vest. After treating them of fascist, white supremacists, that didn't work. Now anti-Semite, that didn't work as well. So now the last one is this. They are all pretty much violent people. And because of that, we're going to push that law that says that anyone that is in a protest will be arrested as a violent person, therefore be prosecuted literally the same day. It doesn't matter if you're just walking in the street and walking your dog, you're there, boom, that's it. You are guilty. So that is one step, but they went further. Of course, that's not enough. Now they went further, and what they did, they said, well, while all this is happening, now we're going to go a step further and tell that, well, we're going to bring the army. And people are like, what? Yes, because we need to relieve a little bit the cops from, protecting all these buildings that are very important because they represent the Republic of France. We're going to ask the army that's right now in a mission for the last 10 years called Sentinel, which are pretty much walking around, the train station, airport, where there's a lot of gathering to pretty much protect against terrorism attacks. So they're going to take some of these armies, squads, and put them in front of major important building representing the Republic. They said, well, but don't worry, they're just there to protect the building. But here is the problem. Some of these Antifa guys love to go after cops that are highly, they have a lot of weapons and very dangerous. They didn't shoot on people yet with real guns. But the army, the problem, if the military, the general says, well, this is completely stupid because, okay, it's one thing that they protect a building, but if ever there is any crazy Antifa, whatever, fake yellow vest, aggressing them, throwing acid to them, these guys don't have shields like the police, the riot police. They just have a machine gun. So they will have to defend themselves. And the only weapon they have is machine guns. So what's going to happen here? So everybody is screaming out of their lungs, saying, this is insanity. While all these, now, of course, they push a little further because now they even said that all the French people, the French yellow vest, are terrorists because a few burned a building and there were a woman and a child on the top floor and nothing happened really. That's called terrorism, when you terrorize people. Therefore, all the yellow vests are terrorists. Now, they give a legal reason for the next step to come in. If ever the army shoots someone, well, guess what? They are there to shoot terrorists. Well, yellow vest protesters are terrorists. So it's all good. See what's going. It's crazy. So in the meantime, when everybody focuses on this, there is a few things that the government has voted. A few laws, very benign. For example, they're selling out completely the patrimoine. There are some, for example, things like the airport of Paris, Charles de Gaulle, the train, the network, the French train network, the highways, and things like that belongs to France. It's national property. They're selling out slowly, bit by bit, all these French, French groups and business to foreign lobbies.
All right, so wait a minute. Let me understand this. So
they're selling out France.
What are the locations that they're selling?
For example, the airport of Paris.
Wait a minute. They're selling the airport of Paris to another corporation outside of the country.
Yeah. Like any big corporation can come and buy the airport of Paris, and suddenly, it doesn't belong to France anymore. And all, for example, the train stations and all the train network of Paris, of France, was also for sale. So it's like there are some business that are specialized in going into a company that's not working great, and they start to dismantle all the department and sell them to different companies, making a lot of money and different.
But it's not his to sell.
Yes, it's owned by the French government.
Yeah, the French government is owned by the people.
Exactly.
Right. It's like when who was it? Obama, Hillary? I don't know who was it that decided that some of the states in the U.S., because of back debt, belong to China.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so, are they taking the money and pocketing it for themselves? Are they paying it off? What's going on? What is actually going on here? And do they have the right to sell anything as a leader?
Well, it's not the leader. The leader is the puppet of the Rothschild, and of course he's puppets of the lobbies.
But still, do they have? It's like you purchase a property, and you're living in a certain location. Does someone have a right to sell that whole location? Well,
you don't own the land, even if
you don't, but you do. You don't, but you do.
I know.
So technically, they have to give you money for that house then. Even if you want to play that game, mm-hmm. which I think is a game, because I think you do own the property and I think you do own the land, and I don't care what anyone says. But, legally in paper, you agree and you consent and say, yeah, I'll pay taxes on that dirt that's beneath my house. And And so, it's like people saying that they own something that they don't really own. And now you have a whole nation of people who have a say in what gets sold and what doesn't get sold. And they're saying that we don't have a say in it. And that this is when I say, why isn't anyone questioning it? What gives him the right to sell an airport? Oh, that airport doesn't belong. That airport belongs to the people.
Well, the thing is this. The people, which is, most of the citizens, Yellow Vest now, they have discredited their image so badly by days and days and days showing the violence and they're terrorists and this and that now even the rest of the population that were at 90% were supporting the Yellow Vest start to get pretty much mind control and start to say, well, no, this is enough now. These Yellow Vests need to stop. And the folks on the Yellow Vest is look here, don't look there. But in the meantime, at 6 a.m, Saturday, the night of Saturday and Monday, at 6 a.m, when everybody was resting from this craziness in Paris, 35 of the 500 parliament members gathered and voted for. They voted for that law that literally authorized the government. The government says yes to sell all these that belong to France to other big corporations, international corporations. So they're selling France bit by bit. And Macron goes to ski in the meantime. So hey, no worries, all is good.
So it's like the level of corruption is just shocking.
It's beyond anything we have seen. I mean,
they don't need another nation to come in and destroy them. They're creating a self-destruct.
Well, the thing is, this is very clear, and I felt it like a few weeks ago, but now they start to talk about that. Some of these, these people invited on some of these news channels and all that, they start to explain what I'm going to say now is that Macron knew when he was elected what was his goal. It was literally to impoverish France, to literally take all the money, as much money as possible to the tax by pushing people to get pretty much to a point where they have nothing. That would lead to the revolt of the Yellow Vest that the Economist cover of 2017, 6 months before Macron election, was already showing. The Yellow Vest was right there on the cover. So they knew already. So it's already planned. Now, the Yellow Vest started. They know the Yellow Vest what they want. Week after week, they want just freedom. They want to have a kind of referendum every time the government passes a law that, for example, here selling the airport of France, we do a referendum like in Switzerland. No, we don't want. That's it. The government cannot do it. They have their say. Well, they don't want that. So they play deaf. But in the meantime, they cannot just say on the news, hey guys, you know what? F you, we don't want to listen to you. We're going to continue our agenda, which is to sell out literally everything to these big 6, 7, 8 big families that own everything, make them multi-billionaires. And you, well, guess what? You're going to be equal in poverty. They don't want to say that. So the only option they have is to pretend that to discredit the French, the Yellow Vest, and week after week find all kind of scenarios like, oh, now there are, for example, someone says something, one guy in the 1,000 said something that's racist, boom, that's it, they're all racist. And that's good for 2 weeks. And then another one, and then another one. So in the meantime, weeks after weeks after weeks, the Yellow Vests are going nowhere, literally, other than deeper and deeper and deeper into the discredit. But what people don't see is they continue their agendas, the government.
It's almost like they have control somehow with the timeline, and they're able to manipulate, but at some point it's going to hit a wall. And I think something's going to happen to Macron, and this is my intuition. It's going to stun him in a way that he's never been stunned before. And that's going to be the end of it.
He's definitely, he doesn't even, I mean, it's not only the government has his own. For example, there is a whole situation where his bodyguard got involved, putting, the band of the police and had a gun and put an helmet and went in the street and played policeman beating up people the 1st of May 2017. And he got caught on camera and it went pretty much to the news and was like, you know what? I am responsible. If you don't like it, come and take me, come and grab me. That's what he said. Come to my place and grab me. He told that to the French people. So, of course, the French people say, okay. So that's why they started these protests, saying we're gonna come and take you in. We're gonna grab you.
Right.
So now the Senate of France start to investigate and realize that while it was saying that the Russians were supposedly because we heard too that the Russians are behind the yellow vest. Of course, everything is Russian now. This is fashion. Even the weather, everything is Russian. While it was saying that the French yellow vest were Russian, sponsored and paid by the Russian, his own guy, that's just a security guy, discovered that he participated to every meeting, every council that the government, the president has, his personal council. It doesn't have to be there. He's just a bodyguard. And then he was seen in many times in Russia, meeting with oligarchs, of mafia guys, and doing some deals for the government or not, we don't know. So the Senate now says, hey, there's a lot of things going on here. I mean, you're not a king here. This is not a monarchy. There are rules. There's a constitution. What are you doing? So they start to investigate that whole thing. You should see the mess that's doing, because in his mind, it's like, if you go against what I'm doing, automatically you are a fascist. In his mind, that whatever he think he's God, literally, and his government are puppets. They're so afraid of him.
Well, I talked about Karl Lagerfeld, who was involved in the very beginning, and I mentioned, and I said I knew this for sure because Karl Lagerfeld has showed up in other sessions that I've had with people. Actually, this guy had his eye was hurt, his right eye or something like that. And he said, who did that? And I said, who's doing this to me? They just attacked me when I was sleeping. And I said, and I looked and I said, I think it looks like Karl Lagerfeld. I don't know why. So we started looking at pictures of Karl Lagerfeld, and sure enough, there he is with an eye patch. We were like, you could be kidding me. So it was kind of weird. And so it made me further investigate and realize that he was connected to Aldebaran and it's not necessarily, hey, yeah, he's there as a Nazi agent, but his Starseed connection was Aldebaran. And so Aldebaran started communicating with me, and they said, tell Karl Lagerfeld he needs to stop doing. He's caught up in, they're using his energy for different agendas. And sure enough, when the yellow vest thing came up, he was out there speaking on the behalf of Macron. And they said it again, communicate with him and tell him. And of course, I don't have his phone number or anything like that, but I said, Karl, I said, you need to stop whatever you're doing and don't get involved anymore because you're going to get in trouble. And it wasn't long after that he ended up passing. And I was like, there it is.
Well, what's funny is Karl Lagerfeld, 3 weeks before the first protest, was seen in inaugurating the lights that they had, the red lights on the Champs-Élysées for Christmas, the lighting, they put in the trees. And he was standing there on the little podium with a yellow vest. Why would you put a yellow vest for something like that?
Right.
I mean, you're not in the middle of the traffic.
He was hooked into their agenda, and I mean, he's okay. He's back with his Starseed. He's back with Aldebaran. But meantime, maybe he could have contributed something of value. All Starseeds have something of value to contribute, and it's not a good legacy to say that this is what you were participating in and that you had to get pulled out earlier because you're not following the life path properly. What the agreement was. And this happens too often where people this is what I'm talking about, people get hijacked and then they're, get into a situation where they're not in alignment with the reason why they're here. They're caught into the mind control or the agenda, and you're not going to last. This is where people end up dying early or something happens.
Yeah.
They just get kind of pulled out. So it can happen. And like I said, Macron might just find that he hits a serious wall. And because nothing is hidden. You have that many people crying out to the universe saying, hey, for God's sake, what is going on here? We just want to eat, and they're in the right.
They're in the right, but
they're 100% right.
Here's the problem, is that, okay, remove Macron. guess what? Every single leader of every single political party is connected to that Freemason group that's controlling the whole thing, where Macron is part of.
But
so
would they be as stringent? Would they be as cruel to their own people if he wasn't there? And he's creating a leadership of.
He didn't show himself like that before the elections. He was the savior. Like all these guys now want to replace Macron, are just having the same type of.
It could easily be hijacked. That's what I'm saying. It's the puppet master behind this, and it's clear. He doesn't look like he's in his right mind. He's over there smiling when there's nothing to smile about. And you see everyone else with a serious face, and he has this big grin on his face, almost like it looks like he's playing the fool. And so that someone is playing him as the fool and using him, and he's going to have a rude awakening, a very, very rude awakening, because I've seen this play out multiple times.
Yeah, he will definitely fall down from his pedestal. Yeah, that's for sure.
But the people, meanwhile, are trying to send protection to this group because they don't know what's going on.
Well, especially for the next few acts, meaning the next few weekends, they pretty much now say that there are 2-3 people that we've seen on the news all the time that are not leaders, they're just representatives. They just talk for the Yellow Vest, but they don't have any say really what's going on. They just report what the Yellow Vest decide pretty much online. They decide, okay, we all decide we're going to do this. So they said, all right, okay, so I'm going to report that in a channel, whatever, YouTube. But they are now, the Macron is saying that these 2-3 guys are considered pretty much as leader of all these violence and will be responsible it's getting insane. So my thing here is this. They obviously want to bring it to another level, and I don't care what they want to do, because it's not going to happen. That is a freaking fact. It's not going to happen. They, of course, want to create chaos. Their motto, by the way, is order through chaos. Okay? That's not going to happen. That is part of their agenda.
We're going to just cancel and delete all programs and what the protection of the innocent people and those people that they intend to harm, that they don't get harmed, and those that need to wake up so that they're no longer supporting the system any longer, breaking down any type of puppet master controls, and whether it's cycling through the EU or whatever. And we know what's Brexit's also getting interfered with. They're getting caught. They're probably getting either manipulated, mind controlled, or threatened, or all the above. So it's just ask for protection, truth, and the removal of whatever the agendas is, and the power that's supporting the agendas. So. Any other last thoughts before we close?
No, it's definitely, I'm pretty sure there will be way more coming up, in the next few weeks. And just one thing, it doesn't matter. At the end of the day, we need to realize that we're protected. The universe protects us. And if you have your heart in the right place, don't let fear take over. Realize that, as I said, no fear, no master, only divine sovereignty and freedom. That's it. That's the motto here.
Yeah. And that's why we made we're making t-shirts and cups and all sorts of stuff just to help people remind them, positive intentions and be strong. We have it on Teespring, so we'll have that there if people want to purchase something and support, some of the work that we're doing here, as well as thank you for supporting on Patreon. And we will continue to provide information with your support and assistance. So thank you, everyone. Thank you, Chris.
No, my pleasure. Sorry, guys, if it was convoluted, but it's going to get somewhere very soon, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
We're going to see the key of all that.
Well, it's food for thought. That's what it is. But no explanations, no apologies. We just put the information out there Somehow we'll sort it through. It has to come out one way or another. If we wait until everything's said and done, then there's nothing to figure out. It's already out in the open. So
it's too late.
This is the way it's done, piece by piece. So
exactly.
And here again, here's the information for right now. Thank you for listening, and we will be back with another update. Have a good day.
You have been listening to Androna Talks Radio. Join us on YouTube channel Jessica Errol Morocco and visit her website at www.readingsbyariel.com.